Everybody, there's a really great lecture next door that I really wish I could be part of and be seeing, so I appreciate you showing up and last lecture of the evening and hope you've had a great time at Q Group. My name is Deanna Suffel. I'm the Director of Business Operations for Worthington MRO Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the shop control exchange process. I joined Worthington last year in April 2014. My primary background is in accounting. I've worked as a controller for previous companies and been using Quantum for a little over 10 years now, mainly in accounting. Today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about the Type 5 and Type 6 exchange types, and this is going to be using the shop control module if you open work orders or have a repair shop. Earlier, Stephanie had spoke about types 1 through 4 a little bit, and some of that will correlate with this if you were in that meeting as well. Some of the things we'll look at is allocating costs back to customers and billing back our charges, and we'll see how these transactions flow through the accounting module, because everything you do from an operational point is going to affect your accounting team, and I'm sure you've heard that and all experienced that before. We'll track associated history with exchange processes, and we'll exchange transactions from BOM. So the Type 5 exchange is when we exchange our unit and we use an existing external work order for the core. So your customer's already sent you a part, you're working on it. Maybe their unit's BER, maybe they're in a hurry, but you have stock that you can send them right now, and you're going to keep their unit to take that place. You can capture the cost from the core unit back to the original exchange, or you can roll the core stock value. It's up to you depending on how your company is structured and how you choose to do your costing. So to begin, you're going to start by creating a sales order to the customer. You already have your external work order open on the work that you've been doing, and you'll add an exchange line to the sales order. And here you'll want to enter your basic sale price, any necessary information that's set up for your company. Make sure you fill in everything they need, and then an exchange tab will pop up. Choose Type 5. Fill in any necessary information there, also your core values, your core due dates. Although you already have your core here, anything that is necessary for your company's reporting, make sure you do take care of. Under the work order number is where you're going to choose the work order that's open now that you're going to use to be your core return. And a note is that Quantum does not limit by part number, so you can swap anything you want. As long as it's same customer and your work order is open or in a delayed status, you can choose anything. So this is just from the sales order, the exchange screen showing Type 5 is chosen. A lot of the information isn't filled in because that's user specific. Pick your costing, how you're going to depreciate or cost out your cost of your unit. Then your work order showing the pop-up screen that's going to come up with the options that you have to choose. Back to the sales order, once you clicked OK, you'll choose exchange at the bottom, and you're going to link that core to the work order. It's important that you keep all of your links together and make everything flow. Then you'll be prompted to choose a status from the cancel options. And I think this is changing, that we heard earlier today that they're in the process of making a change so it doesn't do this, but right now it opens up an entirely new work order for you. So all of your paperwork and documentation has to be updated and changed because there's a new work order number on that, but I think they're changing that, so that should be helpful in the future. And then an option to bill the customer for the work order cost is prompted. If you select no, it'll leave the costs on your new internal work order for your core. A summary screen will show the transaction details, and you can see the original external work order was closed and a new internal work order is open. Again, I think that's going to be changing, but for now that's the way it works. And this is kind of a step-by-step flow of what you do there, from your exchange, linking, your status, choose how you're going to bill, and then that screen will show you the details of your external and internal new work order. In today's example, we're going to close the new work order, and we're going to go ahead and recognize the cost in the original exchange transaction, so it's all wrapped into one. This exchange will return the core unit back to stock with zero cost. And if you wish for the exchange or the existing core cost to remain in WIP and roll to the core, you can proceed with shipping and billing from the original sales order now. You'll need to open your new internal work order to finish that, verify all the information, and proceed with closing as your guidelines for your internal work orders. And after reconciling, you'll be asked if you wish to charge the customer for additional work order costs. Today in this example, we're saying yes, and a prompt will show you that the work order cost was charged. So again, you can see down at the bottom, that detail of the exchange summary is kept on the sales order, or I'm not sorry, not sales order, the stock line. So you'll always be able to see that history through the transaction. Back to your original sales order that you created your exchange, there's a new line now for the costs that were from your core. And if you're billing the customer exact for those costs, or if you're going to mark it up or do anything, you can change that now. If you're not billing them for those costs, but you just want to recognize them, you can change your pricing to 0. Your GL will now show a removal from WIP into inventory, out of inventory charged to cost of goods sold for the original core accumulated cost. So that's an example of the GL batch showing the flow. From here, you're done with the work order, and you can just process your sales order per your company guidelines, verify all the costs and the pricing match as intended per your exchange agreement, make sure your headers match, make sure your GL is matched and everything. And then when you create your invoice, you'll add both line items over. It's important to make sure that you started from the beginning and set everything up correct and watch step by step as you go. It's a lot easier to correct it before you get to the point of the invoice and posting. So if you can catch things and make sure you're set up from the beginning, you'll be better off. And in this example, your invoice is going to generate for both the exchange fee and include the accumulated cost. So once your GL is posted, it will recognize revenue and accounts receivable and remove exchange stock from inventory and COGS. And that's just an example of the transaction. Things to remember for the Type 5. Always verify your pricing and your costing at each step. Work with your accounting team and your admin team to set up a process for your initial setup. Verify your costs and your core, and test your company-specific desires and design a process that fits your individual needs. I think Paul had mentioned before that the lot module can override this, so really make sure you do test if you have predetermined costing set up. These can work different and be tricky for you. Sorry. Next is the Type 6 exchange, and we're going to exchange our stock and create an internal work order for a returning core. I think this is the most common that we see used in our industry, and it's a great tool for all MRO shops, especially if you carry any kind of stock, or it gives you the flexibility of having a quicker transaction in a larger customer base. And you can save time by automating your steps and combining your processes. Same thing, you're going to start from your sales order, and you're going to add an exchange line just like you did before. All of your necessary information, enter it from your sales order. On your exchange tab, you're just going to choose Type 6. And again, any information for your costing or for your company-specific details. So everything looks exactly the same as we just seen, but it's now a Type 6 exchange. Your cost method's important, your core charge if you're going to do any of that. The only thing we're not doing is entering that work order because we have a core coming back. You'll go ahead and continue to ship an invoice from the sales order per your customer instructions and your company process. Verify your pricing again and make sure everything is flowing the way that your company's set up, either through the lot module or for your costing. And once your invoice is posted, all revenue and accounts receivable will be recognized, and associated costs with your exchange unit will be removed from inventory to a waiting core. Now that can change again depending on how you set things up and how your company needs to do things. But in this example, this is what it's going to look like. So once you get the core back, you'll process the receipt of the return core through the original sales order. And you can follow your company receiving guidelines. That may be through your receiving module or through the sales order direct, depending on how you have that set up. After receiving, automatically an adding work order screen will pop up for you, and it'll default to an internal, and that completes the transfer of ownership for the entire exchange transaction. And you'll want to complete all your fields just like you were creating a normal internal work order. 2 GL batches are created now after receiving. A batch will remove the original cost from a waiting core, and put into inventory, and then right back out of inventory into WIP for that original stock value. And these are the 2 GL transactions. After completion of the core, you can return your work order per your company guidelines. You reconcile just like you would a normal internal work order, and you'll be prompted and asked, would you like to charge the customer for the additional work order cost? In this example, we're going to say yes, and if you agreed to a flat rate exchange, you would say no, and it would just roll on. All costs incurred in the work order will be charged to the customer at this point. So everything looks normal as you would, you just have that additional pop-up asking about the costs and how you would like to handle that. Your original sales order now reopens, and a second line is added for the repair charges that will be added. Costs and prices are equal to the exact amount charged to the customer. You can use the markup feature, though, if you want to add to that, or to calculate different billing. And a GL batch is now created containing 3 transactions. You move the original stock costs back to the new stock line from WIP, then you transfer those costs from WIP back to inventory for your original core, and then those same costs for this work order go into COGS. So that lines out the 3 separate transactions that happen in one batch, and you can see how it flows through, and you end back up with your original inventory core. Again, that can change depending on how your company wants to structure that, how you've chosen to cost, and if you have predefined lot or percentages set up. From the original sales order, you're ready to just create your invoice now, and your sales order will automatically close just like any other normal transaction. Once the invoice is posted, you'll have a GL batch recognizing revenue and accounts receivable for your repair charge. Tips to remember on type 6. Always understand your entire exchange transaction, and you'll hear us say that so many times, again and again and again. If you start from the beginning and you understand exactly what you want to do and you don't try to change your scenario midway through, you're going to be better off. Watch each step and make sure you're getting the right outcome as you go. It's a lot easier to catch it and fix it as you go than to try to work backwards. And always check with your accounting team if you're unsure, your admin team, to make sure things are working and posting correctly. In other words, you'll end up at the end of the month or the end of the quarter with questions that you may not be able to answer or you may not remember. So it's better to check as you go and test. The next exchange we're going to look at is the main component exchange, and we personally don't use this a lot. It's more a quick method, drag and drop, do a quick change, what you need to do. Really, if you're not concerned about costing, you just want to swap a unit for a unit and you have a quick exchange agreement in place, you could use it. It's your personal preference and how you would like to move forward with it, but both of your work orders must be in an open status, and it only works when the main components are the same or an alternate, and that can be the source part number or the modified part number in the work order header, but they have to be the same. So if you choose to do this, you'll start by opening the main component exchange window from the shop control module. The upper section is going to show you all available and open work orders. The bottom left section will show you which work orders are exchangeable when you select a work order from the upper section, so only those that are alternates are the same. The bottom right section will show you which stock items are exchangeable when you select a work order from the upper section. You can process external to external, external to internal, work order to work order, or stock to work order. In this example, we're going to exchange an internal to an external work order. All labor, materials, tasks, status, costs, types will be transferred with this. Everything just moves directly over. In the next figure, you'll see 2 different work orders. You can see one's an external with a $59,000 cost, one's an internal with a $62,000 cost. So that just kind of gives you a quick glance at it. And in the work order main component exchange window that you just looked at, you'll choose the work order in the top section you wish to exchange. And in the bottom left section are your available work orders. Click on a work order you wish to exchange and just click Do Exchange. The screen will give you a chance to verify the items being exchanged and enter an authorization number. And it's important to know if you're exchanging one item for a work order that has multiple, you're given the option to enter a manual work order to split that. This is supposed to be a video showing the exchange since it's drag and drop, but unfortunately it doesn't work. So if you download this presentation, you'll be able to see that, but it's just click, drag, drop, do exchange, and it works. I wish I could show you, I'm sorry. Back to our original 2 work orders, you can see now the work order numbers are the same, but the cost, the customer, the type are all changed. Everything is switched over exact. Tips to remember: drag and drop functions are quick and straightforward. The parts must be linked as alternates to be exchanged. All cost and history are transferred in the exchange. And if you process an exchange by mistake, you can easily exchange it back in this method. That's only if you haven't done any other history or made any other changes. If you've done anything, I really wouldn't recommend it, but if you did it by accident and you need to swap back really quick, it's simple to do. If you're looking down at the bottom, the session history will show the exchanges that have processed during this session. But if you close that and reopen the screen, you're not going to see that again there. You'll have to go to the shop control module and look under work order exchange history to see that. And that's the only place you'll be able to find that history. The last item we're looking at is the BOM exchange. This is a really quick and simple way to transfer reservations between jobs. If you're waiting on parts for one job and you have a less time-sensitive job that you need to pull those from, this is a great way just to pull the reservations over so you can issue where you need them to be. You can transfer to or from selected jobs wherever you're at, and it transfers all associated history and cost to the new job. Stock line history will show the timestamp and transfer for the exchange part. Open the work order you're transferring to or from, and then on the Parts Management tab, highlight the part you want to exchange. Click BOM Miscellaneous and then Exchange, and you'll have a window pop up showing you the options. The left side column will show you any reservations for your current work order. The upper right section will show you any active work order with this part on the BOM, and the bottom right section will show you the details of the reservation for the chosen work order from the upper right section. So again, you go BOM Miscellaneous, Exchange, when you're highlighted on the part you're wanting to work with, and your BOM Exchange screen will come up. In this example, our current job has no reservations, so we'll transfer from another job into this one. To process the exchange, all you need to do is highlight in the work order in the upper right section you want to pull the reservation from. In the bottom right section, you'll see the reserved parts, and you can click on the reservations in the bottom right side and just drag it to the left-hand side. Your reservation is now listed in your current work order, and the highlighted job in the upper right section will not have anything listed. And if you pull up this presentation, this is another video showing you the options where you can drag and drop and how it works. It's a quick, simple transfer over. Tips to remember on BOM Exchange: if the quantity reserved matches the quantity needed, you will not be able to transfer. If there's nothing there for it to reserve to, it won't let you, so that kind of makes sense to all of us. Issued stock is not available for exchange. At that point, there's already GL transactions made, and it's already assumed that it's been put on a job. So if you wish for that to happen, you have to actually undo the stock activity, and then you could make the reservation. BO exchange can be done from a work order by dragging and dropping the reservation. It's a simple, quick, easy way to do it where you don't have to navigate in and out of screens and work orders. And again, there are no GL accounting entries made as part of this. It's just a simple reservation-only task. So, I'm super fast. End of the day. Q group component control.
So I assume that everybody in here uses the work order module, and you're in here because you have challenges with exchanges in the work order environment. And I know that our environment in Tulsa, and some of the arrangements we've got, we run into fairly complicated scenarios when we want to exchange things. Doing exchanges in between two customer work orders, or pulling something off of a work order and then doing a repair on it and then sending it back to the customer as an overhaul, and then they send a core replacement to go back on the BOM. Just all these crazy scenarios that the sales guys come up with to accommodate whatever scenario there is to make money, which is great. So I'm really, really curious to know if there's anybody here that has unique situations that need to be addressed, that you have challenges for, or that you figure out how to handle some of these unique situations. One of the reasons that I asked Deanna to do this lecture is because I was really hoping for myself to get feedback on how you guys are using it. And so I'm really hoping that there's some interesting stories here. Does anybody have anything they want to share? There's one. Do we have another mic?
Yeah, we have, being an engine maintenance center, sometimes a lot of the challenges we had is that we needed to be able to also change it while it's in whip, from like one sub recorder and attach it. We did a small enhancement. I think actually we're still working through the accounting part of it because something was going screwy on that end. Like we had managed to like keep the shell of one work order and move everything from like the exchanged work order, but I think yeah, we're still struggling a little bit with the accounting and reconciling costs. And we also found that then it didn't replace the original work order number. Like all the children kept the different work order, but we sort of lost a bit that tree to trace back from like a planning perspective.
So you were exchanging a bill of material item on a sub work order, is that correct? Or were you exchanging the main component on a sub work order?
It's more like, let's say a mini module between two engines, or even like one level lower, one part off of one engine, like about disposition.
Yeah.
Let's say we wanted to switch it over because, I don't know, this one had a long lead time repair, and we know it's not going to make the kit date, so we're going to pull from another one.
Sounds like us.
Yeah.
So, and ideally, we want to be able to do this in WIP, and right now we're sticking to the replace, forcing things to be turned in and then reserve the stock line.
But technically, at this point, you don't have anything issued. It's just a reservation. You're waiting on something, but you're pulling a reservation from another piece over to complete that one.
Yeah. That's like we wanted to break the link up front and sort of track it all together. You're just looking from the engine so that way you'll know which one is gonna go in. You're already like pre-planning which one you're gonna issue. Especially if they're track parts and whatnot, you're kind of like module swapping, so.
But if you haven't issued at this point, there shouldn't be any GL transactions. If you've only got reservations on your parts, it's on the BOM.
It's in WIP.
Yeah, I think when it does close out in the
The
end.
main component's in WIP, but the BOM's not.
But what I was curious is for the BOM exchange,
Mm-hmm.
what's the advantage of using that versus just like, in essence, it's like a replace, right?
It is. I've seen my staff where they go into one work order, they go in and delete a reservation, and they have to open another work order, and then they go in and have to re-reserve and find the stock that way. So it's really just a quicker time saver for you if you're already in a work order. I need this part, I need it right now, where do I have it? Let me check the BOM exchange. Oh, I've got a job that's not due until the end of the month, I've got time, I can go ahead and take that reservation. So it's really just a quicker time-saving tool, and the drag and drop.
Like turn in, cancel reservation.
Well, at this point, it's only at the reservation level. It's not been issued, it's only reservations. If you've issued it, you can't use the BOM exchange unless you undo that issue, because it's already hit WIP and accounting at that point. Is that right? Okay.
Anything else? Anyone else? There's another one? Two.
Thank you. I have a facility that does brake exchanges. So what we do is we send out brakes to a customer, and then he sends back his old brakes for ours to be rebuilt. So I was told, not implemented this yet, I was told that we're a type 6 exchange. We ship and invoice the brakes as it goes out. We create a work order when his cores come back. And what we wanted to do is kind of delay the core credit until after the work order is complete to find out the bill backs to to be added on, of course, it just got sent back.
So what you could do there is, remove the work order concept from that transaction and ask yourself, how would you handle that if it was just a regular sale exchange and you were evaluating the core by sending on a repair? You could allow the creation of that credit memo on the core charge, but just don't post it, right? You could not bill that core charge through the exchange function altogether up front, and you could bill it as a separate charge item on the order, and then when the exchange comes back, then just manually credit the exchange that way. That's another way. There's a couple of different ways you could do that. I don't think the fact that the work order itself is involved in there might complicate it anymore. Just kind of thinking this through in my head.
Is it true though that on a type 6 exchange, when the core comes in, the core is instantly credited?
Is there a way you can stop that? We talked about that earlier, and I would think there's a way where you could stop it, where you have to go in and make the credit memo happen, but.
You mean if you build it, does it automatically create the credit? It doesn't automatically post it. It's a big difference. So that credit memo can be created, but you don't have to post it. And as long as you don't post it, you can delete it and do whatever you want with it.
Okay, yes.
But the answer to your question is yes, it is automatically created when it's received.
Okay, and there's no way about delaying that or tying a contingent upon the work order being complete?
Not that's built into the system currently that I'm aware of. Put that on your surveys that's a really good point. Put that on your surveys as something that we need to include in enhancements and discussions with component control.
We had talked about awaiting core, clearing out, going into inventory, and then going from inventory into WIP, but I don't know if you just deleted the credit memo, how that would affect your GL transactions too. So it might throw some of your reporting off if you did just go in and delete that credit memo and not post it. There may be something there that gets thrown off, so you definitely want to check that too.
Yeah, run it through your test database if that's what you're going to do, but I suspect the only difference on that is that your receivable for that core charge is still remain open.
I just need to give the guy a full core credit, and then after I go through work order, I find out that this quarter not that great, and then I go, hey, I just gave you 400, but once you give me 1,000 back.
So do you have your credit memos set up so that you're manually entering your credit memo numbers?
I think we.
What's that? One thing that you might consider doing is seeing if you can't somehow come up with a numbering schema that matches your credit memo number to your work order or vice versa. And then don't post that credit memo and then go back. So when you're working on your work order and it gets to the point where you say, okay, we do need to charge this, very easily you can reference back the credit memo that you're dealing with that ties back to that core charge. But he doesn't get a credit until you post an invoice, and then on top of that, he doesn't get it until you actually give it to him, in the mail or whatever is my point. But so I really think that at least for the interim, until that's looked at further, perhaps your best solution is just to not post that credit memo. And if you have some indicator that it is a special credit memo for that core charge, so that it gets managed a little bit separately, it might make it a little more palatable to deal with. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right, thank you.
There was another question over here.
It's on the BOM exchange. Does this functionality work in the work package module?
I have not tested the work package module for it, so I cannot say 100% on that. It seems like it would. I can say I would think it would, but I would not guarantee that. If it's only at a...
All the exchanges that we do are on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we used the aircraft maintenance module for many years ago. But honestly, I can't say I recall ever trying the BOM exchange in aircraft maintenance. So, yeah.
And we don't use it often. It's just a quick tool in those instances where you've hit a moment. I need something, I'm in this work order, what are my options? So it's really not a tool that we use often anyway, but it is handy.
So we run into scenarios where a mechanical
Mhm.
But what that does is we have to recreate all the bill of materials on the correct card, and have everything unreserved, have everything re-reserved.
Yeah.
Does that happen frequently?
Yeah.
So you might consider trying to put some sort of mechanisms in place that help you do a root cause analysis on the process to try and prevent that, or at least minimize.
It's the human error.
Yeah.
Plus, if your part numbers aren't alternates or aren't the same, it's not going to work anyway. If they're putting in part numbers that are completely different, the BOM exchange wouldn't work because it's only going to look for those same or alternate parts too. So it may not help anyway if it's the human error part coming in.
Any other questions? Any other questions? I tell a joke, but I don't know many.
I don't either. This is my first presentation, so it was super short.
All right, so let's give her a round of applause.